members to the meeting of the full council on the 25th of September. This meeting has been recorded. Before we begin business today, I'm sure I speak for all members in placing on record our thanks to the Counting Officer, Alex Haswell, and his staff, and also the Electoral Registration Officer and his team for all their hard work on the recent independence referendum. Turnout was huge, both in terms of postal and personal voting. As a result, there was a considerable amount of effort put into preparations for the referendum, the poll and the count, with ERO staff working overnight, dealing with late registrations and applications for postal votes. And again, an election count here in the region has been carried out accurately, efficiently and professionally. There will, however, be mixed feelings and mixed emotions across groups about the result itself. However, what struck me in the recent days is the fact that although individuals' views on the independence may not have changed, the vast majority of people accept the democratic outcome and wish to move on in the interest of Scotland. That message is coming across loud and clear to me. I'm sure that it's very much also the case with elected members. I have said before, and I make no apology for saying again, no member or group on this council has a monopoly on good ideas. We all have a considerable amount of work to do in reshaping the council, agreeing and then delivering on our priorities and dealing with the significant budget challenges we face. This will need the input from all members. I therefore reiterate again my commitment as leader to build an inclusive council to meet the joint challenges we face in the weeks and months ahead. If we can move on to item 2, do we have any declarations of interest? Jim?
Thanks, Leader. Item 12. As an individual who is likely to be directly affected by that motion, I would declare an interest and would not participate in discussion.
I've just been told I forgot to do the Sederunt. I'll do that first then. Sederunt, apologies, sorry.
Thank you, Leader. We have 2 apologies, Councillor Diggle and Councillor Brodie. Otherwise, all present and correct.
Thank you. Any other declarations of interest? You've got Craig, then Ted. Come back in.
Thank you, Leader. Again, item 12. I'll declare an interest in that. I will not take any part in the discussion. I will leave the room in the basis that I have some rented property.
Ted?
Similar.
Marianne?
Thanks, Chair. Same. I've rented, part owner, rented property.
Jim?
I'm the same, Chair. I have a share in a rented property.
John?
Same, Chair.
Brian?
Thanks, Chair. First of all, apologies for coming in late. You kicked off the meeting. I don't know, my watch and that clock doesn't agree. However, I would express an interest in item 10, obviously, and I intend taking part in the discussion. Thank you.
Alistair?
Item 12, Chairman, I have a rented property, but my interest is such that I don't deem it necessary for me to leave that.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. I have an interest, declare an interest on item 12. So I have a flat down venue and currently.
Andrew?
Same position, item 12.
Jill?
Chair, it's again item 12, but actually I don't, it's not my interest, but it is my husband's business interest. So I just wanted to declare that, but I have no issue about staying in at the meeting.
Patsy?
Well, I'm saying we have rented property.
Item 12 as well, Chair, Leader.
And, sorry, Stephen?
Similar to item 12 as well, thanks.
Ivor?
Chair, I have a property I've just purchased, sitting empty just now, but I hope to have someone in it. I don't think I need to declare an interest because I plan to, and I would like to take governance advice on that, because is it if it's sitting empty, or is it if you plan to have it sitting empty longer than 2 years that you need to declare an interest?
I think it's up to the members. I'll leave it to Alec. I think it's up to the members, but there is a possibility of properties, whether you want them or not, lying for 2 years. But anyway, Alex.
Thanks, Leader. I think most members are declaring an interest because they're a private landlord, rather than because they've got property either empty or full. I think that's the view that members are taking. So if they're a landlord, they're declaring an interest.
Okay, Colin.
Item 12 in that case.
Okay, and myself, I'm a landlord. Graham?
Item 12, and the property's no empty, and it's a disaster if it is empty.
Would you put your hand up if you haven't got one?
You're for it.
Thank you. Did I miss anybody? Jeff?
Item 12, but it's out with Dumfries and Galloway.
So you're declaring an interest, but you're staying. Okay. Ivor?
Just in case, then, I think I'll declare an interest as well.
I think the governance officer's trying to tell me something.
If your property is not in Dumfries and Galloway, sir, I don't think you've got any need to declare an interest. I think it's not even in this country.
It is in Scotland.
Finlay?
On the back of everybody else declaring an interest, I'll also declare an interest in item 12.
I've got a chicken coop in the garden, if that applies.
Is it vacant?
Yes.
Okay, can I have item 3 minute meeting the 26th of June? I'll move. Davy first.
Aye, Chair, it's on a question of accuracy. I didn't return after lunch at that meeting, and I'm listed as having returned.
Councillor McKee spoke to me about that, sir. I acknowledge that. That's an error in the minute. We'll correct that.
Okay, Andrew.
Just seeking a point of clarification on the periodic review at 13.9. It's the amendments within section 3.6.2. Can you give us clarification exactly what those amendments are? Because I've not been able to access them.
I think it's any amendment, sir. I would need to look at that for the member and come back to Councillor Wood, but I think it's any amendment. You can only consider amendments during a periodic review. You can't consider them at any other time.
As I recall, the debate that we had was that a lot of members were wanting to reduce it from 8 years, probably down to 5 years. There was an amendment that was put forward, I think, suggesting that communities could come forward with various proposals during that 8-year period so as we could make changes where required if anomalies were found. And I wonder, would it be possible then just to check the audio recording? It may give, put some clarity on exactly the point I'm trying to make.
Can we get clarity from Councillor Wood? What's wrong with the minutes, sir?
Within the minutes, I haven't been able to identify the amendments to the scheme within the 3.6.2, because the way it reads at the moment, it would look as though there is no mechanism put in place to allow us to make changes within 8 years until the next review. Now that, I don't believe, was the will of the committee at the last meeting.
So, Councillor Woods, what you're saying is that that statement there is not true.
I am concerned about its validity, yes.
But are you saying it's not true, or have you got,
I don't know if it's not true because I haven't been
Well-
able to access the document. All I'm seeking is clarification so as we can identify whether if it is true, whether it's factual or not factual, if it is actually meeting the will of the members.
Sir, if Councillor Wood's worried about administrative amendments, we can make administrative amendments to the scheme as I go along. The review talks about a periodic review and that major amendments to the scheme can only be made, for example, changes in community council areas and things like that.
And they can be made during that 8-year period.
There was considerable discussion about it, sir. I think Councillor Geddes, in fact, moved that it be 4 years or suggested it be 4 years, and when the matter was explained to him, he accepted it would be 8 years. I don't want to put words in Councillor Geddes' mouth, but I do recall his discussion of that. There was certainly no vote on it, sir, and the recommendation was 8 years, and the recommendation was adopted.
Alistair?
That is indeed the case, Leader. I'm grateful to Mr. Hansford.
Okay. Jim?
Yeah, thanks, Leader. You'll be glad to hear mine is about absolute accuracy on item 14 on page 9. My recollection is that delegation was removed, and then I asked for a deferral or consideration of the report. That the minute there would suggest that the whole thing was deferred before the actual delegation was removed.
Quite happy to accept that. The report to the full council today acknowledges that, sir.
Stephen?
Thank you, Leader. It was actually on 8.4 on page 5 in the minute. And the reason why I'm sort of questioning it is what I understood we agreed was that the Chief Executive would develop detailed proposals for organisational agreements and report to a future meeting, as in this one, prior to delivering a programme of change. But it was only on reading the full papers on item 9, some arrangements have already been made prior to this meeting. So it was just really to get clarity on that, and if whether organisational management changes are included in that.
Organisational managements are within my delegation, and I'm happy to explain that in the appropriate paper in the council agenda.
Thank you.
Okay, Jane.
Thank you. Just a couple of small things, administrative, I think. On page 4, Leader, 5.3, it simply talks about applied to committee membership as detailed at the appendix. Would we expect an appendix attached? It's just a question. I don't know whether we would or we wouldn't. And on page 10, could I possibly ask the word when in 16.2 to have substituted the word which? It's just a grammatical issue.
It's a typographical error, so we'll change it. The appendix was attached to the previous paper, sir.
Okay, with them changes, I'll move the seconded Weaver, seconded by Councillor Weaver. Minute of the meeting of the 9th of July, I'll move. Seconded by Councillor Weaver. Okay, moving on to item 5, committee arrangements, report by Director Chief Executive. In June, the members agreed that a report be brought to a future meeting regarding the appointment of senior councillors. There are a number of vacancies listed in the appendices. In addition, I can also inform members that there are vacancies for the Chair of the Planning and Applications Committee and the Vice Chairs of Stewardship Area Committee and Wigtonshire Area Committee, as the current post holders are stepping aside from these specific posts. The Labour group would wish to put forward a number of nominations for some of the vacant positions. These are listed in the paper, which I'll now circulate to members. I would propose to take these positions first and then deal with the other vacant positions and ask for nominations. I would also wish to propose a change in the number of members in the main committees. As members are aware, previously the membership was 23 and then 21. This was reduced to 19. The Labour group would wish to propose this is increased to 21. This will give more members an opportunity to be involved in the main service committees and also ensure that committee membership better reflects proportionality. So firstly, you will see from the paper circulated the following nominations: Civic Head and Deputy Leader of the Council and the Vice Chair of Policy and Resources Committee, nominating Ted Thompson. Chair of the Ad Hoc Subcommittee Review of Schemes, Tom McCautry. Chair of the Crichton Subcommittee, Colin Smith. Vice Chair of Community and Customer Services Committee, John Martin. Chair of DG First Committee, Archie Dryborough. Vice Chair of Economy, Environment and Infrastructure Committee and also the Chair of the Housing Subcommittee, Craig Peacock. Vice Chair of Education Committee, David McKee. Chair of Planning Applications Committee, John Martin. Vice Chair of Planning Applications Committee, Jim Dempster. Chair of Social Work Services Committee and Chair of the Social Work Services Subcommittee, Jim Dempster. Chair of Police, Fire and Rescue Subcommittee, John Syme. Chair of Wigton Area Committee, Marion McCutcheon. Vice Chair of Wigton Area Committee, Jim McComb. Vice Chair of Nithsdale Area Committee, John Syme. Vice Chair of Annandale and Eskdale Area Committee, Graham Tate. If we can deal with these positions I've listed first and then move on to the other positions of vacancies, can I ask if there's any seconder for my nomination above? Can I ask if there are any other nominations for any of the positions I have listed? No, that's carried. Okay, can we now turn to the positions that remain vacant? Can I ask if there's any nominations for those positions listed as vacant? For information, they are Chair of Audit and Risk Management, Vice Chair of Audit and Risk Management, Chair of Stewardship Area Committee, Vice Chair of the Stewardship Area Committee, and Chair of Employment and Appeals Subcommittee. Ivor.
Thank you, Leader. In the interests of the residents of Dumfries and Galloway and the stability of this council, the Dumfries and Galloway Conservative and Unionist Council Group and Dumfries and Galloway Council wish to nominate the following councillors for senior councillor positions and committee vacancies as stipulated on your paper at item 5, pages 25 and 26. I would nominate Councillor Jill Dykes for Chair of Audit and Risk Management, Councillor Patsy Gilroy, Vice Chair of Audit and Risk Management, Councillor Finlay Carson for Chairman of Stewardship Area Committee, Councillor Ian Blake for Vice Chairman of Stewardship Area Committee, and Councillor Graham Nicholl for Chairman of Employment Appeals Subcommittee.
Colin, you want it done?
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to nominate David Stitt for Chair of Stewardship Area Committee. I think he's been doing a fine job in the interim period.
Chair. David.
Chair. I'd like to decline all your working commitments.
Thank you. Graham.
Thank you, Chair. Happy to second Councillor Hislop's nomination. Sorry. Motion.
Okay, agreed? Agreed. Can we now also agree to increase the membership of the 19 persons committee to 21? Agreed? Oh, sorry. Willie?
Yeah, Chair, I think at the full council meeting when we were looking at this and you did say you'd bring back the early report, there was also included in that the issue of the housing subcommittee and indeed the parent committee having changed with the change of social work, I believe. Are we going to deal with that today, or is that going to come back as nominations from the political groups?
That'll come to another committee, yeah. Jane?
Would it not be appropriate for members actually to look at the numbers? Have a piece of paper in front of us, look at the numbers?
It's increasing the membership of the 19 committees to 21. Okay, Willie?
Yeah, Chair, in the
Willie?
spirit of what you have suggested in moving from 19 to 21, which I wholly support, in the spirit of that, are we taking it that you may increase the 7 to 11, the 7-member committee to 11?
No. Brian?
Similar question, Leader. Insofar as the 19 to 21 is concerned, I don't have any particular difficulty in that, but I don't understand why it's not following through in other committee numbers. And for clarity, I would just like to understand that it is only, your proposal is only from 19 to 21 and no other committee numbers are affected in that way.
That's correct, yes, and as you've done before. Yep.
I would like,
Colin.
therefore, to request a recess.
Colin first. Colin?
I think that's the only committee that's been significantly reduced. We used to have 23 members of service committees. That was cut to 21, then it was cut down to 19, which is effectively the size of an old subcommittee. No other committee has ever seen a reduction at the same scale as that in the past, including the subcommittees. Seems perfectly logical to me. It also makes the committees more proportionate. If members look at the calculations for committees that we have on 19, you'll see that they're not proportionate. They're as close to proportionate as you can get with a 19-member committee, but you'll see that, for example, one group has 20% more members than another group, but actually in a main service committee of the council has the same number of members. That's not proportionality in anybody's book. It also, I suppose, means that more members can be involved, and maybe the non-aligned group can take up their position on the planning committee, for example.
Ian?
Yeah, Chair, I think I'd like to see the figures and the proportionality, the templates that we used to work on when we were deciding on changes.
Okay, it's committees are 21 rather than 19. Would you read them out?
Thanks, Leader. If the committee is of 21, there are 7 Labour members, 4 SNP, 4 Dumfries and Galloway Conservative and Unionist Council Group, 3 Dumfries and Galloway Conservative and Unionists, 2 independent and 1 non-aligned.
Okay. Any other motions against that? Okay, Andrew?
It's not a motion against, it's actually supporting a recess as suggested by our leader.
I don't intend to take a recess. It's very simple numbers. It's moving the committees from, but you've actually done it in reverse yourselves. It's moving from 19 to 21. Alex gave you the numbers, and I don't see what any other information that you need.
Once again, thank you, Leader. It's not solely to consider the 19 to 21 change that I request the recess. It's the overall slate that's being presented that I wish for our group to have at least further consideration of.
We've already agreed the slates, Councillor Collins. Councillor Maitland?
I think in the spirit of openness and transparency, I think I should explain to members and to the public why this is happening. See, the problem is that the independent group has gone down from five to 4, but the actual numbers haven't. So what the administration found themselves with was a proportionality which gave them 6 members, which didn't in fact increase. Now, they've got to provide another member out of their pool. So they're trying to make the 21 committee into a 7 committee. So that just explains to you what the situation is. I think for the sake of transparency, and everybody will understand, that's what's going on.
But I think Councillor Smith. Yeah.
Chair, I mean, Councillor Maitland makes up one story there, but if I can inform Councillor Maitland that the change from 19 to 21 with the existing membership of the groups, therefore Labour 15, Independent 5, would have exactly the same number of members on committee as is being proposed. So, for example, if the Labour group gone up to 16, there would be 7 members on committees. If the Labour group stayed at 15, there would be 7 members on committees. There would be no difference whatsoever in a committee of 21. I think it's inappropriate to infer that there has actually been a change as a direct result of that. I don't know what the arrangements are in the independent group, whether your numbers have gone up or down, but what I do know is that if the Labour group remains at 15, the number on a 21-member committee is 7 from the Labour group, whether it's 15 or 16.
Okay, I think we've had enough on this. Ian?
Just a brief point. I mean, just because Alec read through them, I think I understand them. The only real extra position that I picked up on, in particular, I think there's 2 extra positions, but the one I did pick up on was the Labour have got an extra position. Is that correct? Because we haven't seen it in writing, we've only heard it verbally. And one of the Dumfries and Galloway Conservative Unionist groups on the council have got an extra position. It's just for absolute clarity on that.
The proportionality is more equal in that, yes. Jim?
Yeah, I have no real problems one way or the other way. A 21 from a 19, however, I would like to see in writing the actual changes. However, a comment was made that one of the reasons for changing was because at the minute, one group has 20% more than the other group, yet they have a lot less numbers. I'm sorry, but if you look at the numbers on a 23, you have a group of 10 having the same number of members of a committee as a group of 8. That is a 20% difference, so we're not really altering the position that you gave for changing it.
Right. Going to the motion. The motion is that we move from move committees that are 19 to 21. Is there an amendment? Ian?
I haven't got an amendment, but in standing orders, I'm sure it says if a procedural has to take precedent. There's a procedural motion put forward and moved and seconded by Collins and Andy Wood, I think, as far as I'm aware. I'm certainly in favour of just seeing this going through as it is.
No, he just asked for a recess. No, he asked for a recess, but sorry, Willie.
Yeah, Chair, I know that you did give me a blunt answer as no on this one, but it's not so much an amendment to the 21. I'm happy to support the 21 more, an addendum in terms of moving the committee in the spirit of inclusion from 7 to 11 member committee as well. whether you accept that as an addendum to your motion or an amendment, it's really up to you, Chair, but I'm happy to move that.
So you're moving an amendment? Okay, have you got a seconder? Okay, Andrew.
Leader, can I just check with you? As I understand it, the members proposed by you as chairs and vice chairs and those proposed by Ivor as chairs and vice chairs have been accepted by all members. There's been an acceptance that the membership of 19 members committees goes up to 21. So Councillor Scobie has moved the motion that the Housing Subcommittee become an 11-member committee. It's not really an amendment to the motion, sir. So you've got a motion from Councillor Scobie, seconded by Councillor Wood, increasing the membership of the Housing Sub from 7 to 11.
In clarity, Chair, it's any subcommittee from 7 to 11.
Any subcommittee.
Okay, there's a motion in. Sorry, can I have quiet, please? Okay, there's a motion on the table for all subcommittees of 7 to move to 11, seconded by Andrew. Is there an amendment to that? Colin?
I propose the status quo.
Ivor, sorry.
Point of clarity, does that include employment appeals sub as well, whereby it was an agreement that would just be 7, because 11 members could be quite daunting for someone coming into that, just for clarity on that.
Councillor Scobie?
Yeah, all subcommittees run on, if we stick to the housing sub and then another sub committee forms, and it will be formed on a number basis. So all committees, Chair.
Okay, Colin? Oh, sorry, Andrew.
Chair, we're talking about the Housing Sub. The Housing Subcommittee is 11 members. So, I mean, we've got a motion there to move the Housing Subcommittee from 7 to 11 when it's actually meeting on Friday with 11 members already. I would imagine that motion probably doesn't actually stand, unless I've picked it up wrongly,
Andrew?
Thanks, Leader. We're also in danger here of shooting ourselves in the foot because the Integration Health Social Care Board requires us to have as close as possible parity with non-exec NHS board members. If we move that subcommittee to 11, what would actually be, that would be cutting across, I would suggest, the plans that are already been well formulated on how our strategic plan, the way we take that forward, is going to actually come to fruition. So if we had a blanket, all subcommittees of 7, it would actually place a burden on the NHS they couldn't match because they don't have 11 non-exec members.
Can I give you clarity, Chairman? I've just checked. The Housing Subcommittee has 11 members. Other subcommittees have 7 for the reason the Social Work Subcommittee, the very reasons that the Councillor has given, and also Employment Appeals for the very reason that Councillor Hislop has given. So Housing Sub has 11 members on it, so it's not a vote, sir.
So that motion is not competent. Is that what you're saying?
It's already 11, sir.
Right, it's already 11, yep. Okay then, can we move on and...
Chair, the motion was for all subcommittees.
All subcommittees, the motion still stands in. Okay, George, sorry.
Thanks, Leader. Just a wee bit of clarification on the employment and appeals. That surely works in a pool system where there are 7 members chosen out of a pool, is it of 19 or whatever the figure may be. So it's actually in a different footing from some of the other subcommittees. Just needing clarification as to how that one would work.
That's correct, sir. It's 7 from 19.
It's still a subcommittee of 7 from a pool. It's still a subcommittee of 7. Okay, then we've got a motion and we've got an amendment.
Thank you, Leader. The motion is by Councillor Scobie, seconded by Councillor Wood, and that is that all subcommittees should comprise 11 members. The amendment by Councillor Smith, seconded by Councillor Ogilvie, is to retain the status quo insofar as subcommittees are concerned. Is that correct? Thank you. Are you ready to proceed to the vote, Leader?
Amendment.
Councillor Bell. Councillor Blake.
Amendment.
Councillor Carruthers. Ian.
Amendment.
Councillor Karen Carruthers.
Amendment.
Councillor Carson.
Amendment.
Councillor Collins. Councillor Davidson. Councillor Dempster.
Amendment.
Councillor Dick.
Amendment.
Councillor Dryborough.
Amendment.
Councillor Dykes.
Amendment.
Councillor Ferguson.
Amendment.
Councillor Forster. Councillor Geddes.
Amendment.
Councillor Gilroy.
Amendment.
Councillor Groom.
Amendment.
Councillor Yen.
Amendment.
Councillor Hislop.
Amendment.
Councillor Lever.
Amendment.
Councillor McCaughtrey.
Amendment.
Councillor McClung.
Amendment.
Councillor McComb.
Amendment.
Councillor McCutcheon.
Amendment.
Councillor McGregor.
Amendment.
Councillor McKee.
Amendment.
Councillor Maitland.
Motion.
Councillor Mayle.
Amendment.
Councillor Marshall.
Amendment.
Councillor Martin.
Amendment.
Councillor Nicholl.
Amendment.
Councillor Ogilvie.
Amendment.
Councillor Peacock.
Amendment.
Councillor Prentice.
Amendment.
Councillor Scobie.
Motion.
Councillor Smith. Councillor Stitt.
Amendment.
Councillor Syme.
Amendment.
Councillor Tate.
Amendment.
Councillor Thompson. Stephen.
Abstain.
Provost Thompson.
Amendment.
Councillor Tuckfield.
Amendment.
Councillor Witts. Councillor Wood. It is.
Sorry, it's a motion.
Thank you. Councillor Wyper.
Amendment.
The amendment is carried by 40 votes to 4 with 1 abstention.
Okay, thank you. We can now move on to item 6, which is the annual Treasury Management Report. This is a report by the Head of Finance. This is annual review of the Treasury Management activities for 2013-14. The report is complex, but the salient point for me is that we have borrowing of 168,325 at the 31st of March this year. We have followed our borrowing strategy and there have been no major deviations from what we had planned. The report sets out the transactions and debt performance, and we paid net interest of £8.039 million. As I said, this is a complex report, and I'm going to ask Andy firstly highlight any issues which you think members should be aware of, and thereafter any questions. For you.
Thanks for that, Chair. As you've stated, the Treasury position that during the year 13-14 reflects the Council's capital programme. It also reflects the agreed drawdown on balances and day-to-day cash implications. Most of the information on there is an outline of the economic position during the year. With regard to Dumfries and Galloway, we had a very quiet year. We did maintain a position of using short-term temporary borrowing to utilise the difference in rates between it and long-term, which explains the increase in temporary debt during the year. And in relation to other Scottish authorities, we maintained an average interest rate, which is one of the best in Scotland. Apart from that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Members? Oh, sorry, Ian.
It's not a question, it's just in your last point, Andy, 3.29, it's almost 25% of my calculations right below the Scottish average, and I think that's well done to the Treasury Management Department.
Sorry, could you?
I said on 3.29. Aye, that's just exactly it. You're doing a great job. Carry on.
Ian.
Just a couple of questions, please, in regards to, see, this time next year, what will this look like? Because it has been quite a flat year for borrowing. And an obvious question that was put to me was, we're spending £8 million a year paying back a debt. How are we looking to reduce that, and how we've got there in the first place? And I'd like you, Andy, to touch on the fact that some of this money is obviously it's been spent to save. So clearly we have borrowed money, but obviously some of this money has been invested to try and reduce our outgoings, because that is a question that has certainly been put to me. So 2 points. Why are we spending this £8 million a year on debt? What do we get for that? And this time next year, what will it look like, our actual figures this time next year, please? Excuse me. The interest on the debt, I mean, it's debt that's built up over all the years and reflects the outstanding capital position or outstanding debt of the council. We are actually under borrowed. The net borrowing, or the capital financial requirement of the council is approaching 250 million, or just over 250 million. And we're running with an external debt of 178 million due to the utilisation of reserves, etc. In discussions with our advisors, they think we should have more debt actually, have more cash-backed reserves, etc. But we're utilising our internal balances at present. Going forward, the only way we can reduce the debt is to reduce capital expenditure. Again, the debt is used, long-term debt is used to finance capital programmes. The revenue programme itself should be more or less self-financing during the year. But the capital programme itself is written off over periods of up to 40 years, which is why there's a build-up of debt.
Thank you. And I think you just found a way to bump it up without actually borrowing there. I think he's at 178, is it 168 you meant?
Yes, the net figure is 168, but the debt itself is 178.
Ivor?
Just wondering if Andrew would like to comment. In fact, we've kept within our targets that we've set for our investment strategy and stuff like that. If we were willing to take a bit more risk, was there opportunities where we could have actually brought in some more money? And on a scale of 1 to 10, how much more risk would we have needed to have sort of accepted to go with any possibility of getting some extra money?
The investment strategy is very risk averse. We do have a limited counterparty list, which is basically major UK banks and other local authorities within the UK. The council is not really here to make money on investments. Any increase in investments would obviously may increase the risk, and would obviously increase the amount of money which we're investing, which would in turn lead to the money that we've borrowed, which is ultra various. We can't borrow money to lend out again. So basically, we work within our parameters. They are very restrictive, but overall, I think we're on the safe side of things. We don't want any sort of Western Isles scenarios.
Ian again.
I think the answer that question was given in 2008 when we discovered how many local authorities have been investing in Icelandic banks. We hadn't.
No other questions? Can we go to the recommendations? Can we note 2.1 and 2.2? Moving on to the review of standing orders and schemes of delegation, item 7. We've an ongoing commitment to review standing orders through an ad hoc subcommittee. This report sets out the recommendations from the subcommittee regarding the recording of dissent in general and recommends that we do not record dissent at Employment and Appeals Subcommittee. It also contains a recommendation from the Community and Customer Services Committee that its remit be extended to include health and well-being issues, which were missed from the original delegations. Do you have any questions, or are we happy to agree? Sorry, yeah.
Thanks, Leader. Just for members' clarity, standing the discussion yesterday, under item 7, the review of standing orders and schemes, paragraph 3.6, just to make it absolutely clear, hearings will comprise 7 members, which is the chair and 6 panel members on a rotational basis. The chair does not rotate. That's just for clarity. Thank you.
Okay, Alistair.
Thanks very much indeed, Leader. I think in relation to 2.1, sir, I think the proposed amendment is in fact helpful and should in fact be adopted. I don't have any quibble with the proposed extension of the remit for the CCS committee either. I do have a concern, sir, and it's not the first time I've articulated this, in relation to the statement in paragraph 3.3 of the report, to the effect that there shall be no recording that a ballot has taken place in relation to meetings of the Employment and Appeals Subcommittee. I personally think, sir, that is totally lacking in transparency. It's not the first time I've said it, and I have make no apologies, Leader, for repeating it today. Technically, it may not be possible to consider it today, and I wouldn't necessarily ask for it to be considered today. I wouldn't want to see us making policy on the hoof and what is a fundamentally important issue. But having said so, sir, to me that really is lacking in transparency. I do accept, Leader, for the record, that if there is no vote recorded, then logically you can't in fact record dissent to a vote which is not recorded. That's not the point. The point I would make, sir, is in fact that there should be a recording in the interests of transparency and accuracy and in the integrity of the proceedings that a ballot has taken place. Thank you.
So could we bring that one back to the ad hoc subcommittee?
With your leave, sir, I'd be very grateful indeed if you would if you agree to that.
Members? Sorry, Philip?
Yeah, Chair, I have a great deal of sympathy for the situation outlined and explained by Councillor Guerres. And perhaps if it was brought back to the full council under the standing order and the scheme of delegation that we do have, and that the votes are recorded as a matter of course, as a matter of transparency and openness, Chair. But, so we get a report back on this.
Okay, can we agree it goes to the ad hoc subcommittee and it comes back to full council for, from the recommendations from the ad hoc subcommittee? Councillor Maitland.
Could I just have transparency about what we're asking then? Are we asking the ad hoc subcommittee to consider whether or not we can record who votes, or are we simply recording a ballot? Let's be absolutely clear about what they're being asked to do.
It's a ballot, is it? Ballot. Yeah. Okay, Andy.
Thanks, Leader. I think it's the only place I can get this in, but I'm going to ask the question anyway. We get back to the Social Work Subcommittee. Can I get some sort of assurance, given it's the Dumfries and Galloway Council who are going to be in partnership with the NHS in terms of the Joint Working Act, that subcommittee or consideration is given to that subcommittee to be moved to a subcommittee of full council as opposed to a subcommittee of social work, because it should be reported to full council, not reporting to the social work subcommittee.
Again, sir, could I bring something back to the, rather than answer the question on the hoof, could I bring something back to the subcommittee and that would come back to the full council? I think there's merit in what you're saying, Councillor Ferguson, but I think I need to check the ramifications in terms of remits, etc.
Leader, I'm happy with that response. That's exactly the response I was looking for. I didn't expect us to make a decision today, but I just wanted to put on the table that we need to be aware that it's full council, not social work.
Okay, can we agree that? Good, okay. Okay, moving on to item 8. It says priorities and commitments. At full council in June, members agreed to review the council's priorities and commitments. All members were invited to what was a very successful seminar on the 22nd August 2014, and I think unanimously the members were in agreement with the 4 priority themes: building the local economy, providing the best start in life for our children, protecting the most vulnerable, and creating an inclusive council. Members will have been sent feedback in the report from the seminar, and as a result, the administration would like to propose the motion being circulated set out on a new list of priorities. You had I sent that through by email, so you should have had it, but the hard copies, if people need that, hard copies. I sent it to every member with a background to it for your information. If the new priorities are agreed, it won't be necessary to update the relevant department action plans with specific actions to fully implement those priorities. So as well as the overarching priorities, I also propose that we remit to the Chief Executive to bring forward for member consideration at the next full council in December proposals to measure the new priorities and commitments and embed their delivery within new business plans from 2015-16. Such a process will give members the opportunity to agree the specific measures to implement the new priorities. Purely by way of background, included in the paper from the Labour Group are a number of example measures. However, it will be through the update in business plans that the actual measures will be agreed by members. I believe the priorities proposed very much reflect the consensus reached at the recent seminar. I know all members are determined that our council makes a positive difference to the lives of those in our community who most need a helping hand. We know that we face falling budgets but rising demand for services, so we do have to focus on the issues that matter most to local people. I have consistently said that the number one priority of our council needs to be building the local economy. We need to commit to ensuring that Dumfries and Galloway emerges from the economic downturn in a stronger position by focusing on tackling as best as we can the underlying weaknesses in our local economy and low pay, underemployment, above average levels of youth employment and low levels of qualification. We also need to make a clear commitment to prioritising giving all local children and young people an equal chance to fulfil their potential, whether that's through strong early year support or delivering the changes needed in our children's services to create the safest possible environment. When it comes to meeting the tough financial challenges, I have also said that we need to be guided by a commitment to protect our most vulnerable residents, whether it is those living in poverty or those suffering from poor health. And finally, if we are to achieve these priorities, it will need all of us to work together as an inclusive council in partnership with local people, our communities, our businesses, our staff, and other organisations in our region. We all have a shared interest in making the most of our talents, vision and commitment of the people who live and work in Dumfries and Galloway. I hope, therefore, that members will agree these priorities today and we can get on with the work of implementing them. Could I ask if any member wishes to raise any points? Brian?
Thanks, Leader. Given 8.1 is very much in line with the SNP manifesto, I'm happy to agree 8.1 and happy to agree 8.2.
Ian?
No, certainly. I would imagine if 8.1, 8.2 should be changed to 2.1, 2.2. But in regards to that, it's be an inclusive council. It states here. What's your stance in regards to you've been inclusive up to now over the last year? What's your stance and your position as we go forward in regards to elected members on the council?
I've always said, and I've always, and I hope I've been open enough to all members, individual members and group leaders, to be an inclusive council and take on board other people's views. As I said, I don't know how many times, you know, we don't have all the good ideas, other members have, and we're happy to listen to them and go forward on the basis of council. Sorry, Willie.
Please.
Behind that box, it's maybe not a bad thing though.
Good bit firm, said here for the side. No, Chair, it's just on protect our most vulnerable people, and particularly to tackle the causes and effects of inequality and poverty. And I have been raising with the Chief Executive the issue of fuel poverty. And while we do not have housing stock per se, we still have the cause and effect of poverty in fuel poverty. And as I say, I would commend the Chief Executive for the work he has already done in referring the matter to the Strategic Housing Department. But I think we've got to recognise that houses suffering from fuel poverty is a big concern in Dumfries and Galloway. Indeed, I think it's running at something of the figure of 43% of people who are facing fuel poverty. So I would like to see it included in your document here and to be part of the council's priority, not necessarily in terms of that we need to be addressing the issue, but working in partnership and seeing with the Scottish Government how we can tackle fuel poverty in a rural area.
I'll let Gavin in, but we are already doing that anyway.
I think I absolutely understand where the member is coming from, but the council recently agreed the development of an all-embracing anti-poverty strategy. Quite rightly, I think that this could be one of the suggested measures underpinning this. But what we're trying to do is embrace poverty and the causes of poverty in its widest context. And I think this a particular issue as a priority for the council. We might miss the connectivity that fuel poverty relates to a number of issues. So very happy to engage with the members on what underpins this as the key measures of success and bring that back for member consideration.
Thank you. Andrew?
There is a slight conflict within this recommendation. It suggests that the learning hubs to be at King George V. Now, I've had correspondence from the hockey club, and within support children to healthy and active section, you talk about increased amount of physical activity, sports clubs, etc. They will be under severe pressure if that was to go ahead and their site for practicing on was taken away from them. I mean, how are you going to resolve these conflicts?
There's no conflict. Colin, you want in?
I just would suggest maybe Andrew looks at a map and looks at where the proposed site is for the learning hub and where the current hockey pitch is. There's no proposals at all to remove the hockey pitch.
Okay, are we happy to agree the wording in the circulated motion, both the priorities and the request for a report at the next full council? Okay, thank you. Moving on to item 9, the shape of the council and development of proposals, report by Chief Executive. This report, it sets out the Chief Executive's proposals and timetable for the Chief Executive Programme of Change. We have already agreed to develop a new shape of our council on 4 main themes: children and learning communities, economy, environment and infrastructure, and corporate services, with the intention of realigning services, making savings, refocusing the organisation to be more customer and community oriented, and aligning services to the relevant committee. Detailed proposals will come to members, but the attached report updates members on the current position, and I'll ask Gavin if there's any further anything further to add before I let members in?
Thank you, Leader. I was asked to bring proposals forward to full council, but obviously a part of the debate was from the floor and not reflected in the motion. I thought bringing some clarity in the process to members would be appropriate at this time, both for members and also, very importantly, for staff, the process that we'll take forward. I'm very mindful of the need to ensure that members' input to the development and to provide for their important considerations through the period of development prior to members' formal consideration and scrutiny of the proposal to come forward. What will happen is I will share information analysis with members over the coming months to support the deliberations, and that will start with the next round of engagement with the political group through the liaison meetings, and I have my first engagement on Monday. The team will come down with me to engage in that discussion. Also, I think ensure that the member engagement is throughout the period and provide information and analysis as it is gathered, not wait for the liaison meeting. So therefore, part of the discussions will be how we communicate the information as we collect it from the methods that sat there and capture views and thoughts and build us into the developing proposals and not wait till the end. I think it's also very clear that it's my intention to engage with staff as wide as possible, listen to their ideas and contributions, because the structure can only work if it can actually work in delivering the outcomes at the front end. And we've already started discussion with the trade unions on how that mechanism will work to ensure that what I bring to you is not just practical from a top down, but from very crucially from a bottom up. And that's part of the discussions in shaping the council. Also for members and staff clarity, I'd have to say I've highlighted the amendments to the current temporary arrangements for leadership in customer and community services, and very mindful that these have been in place for a year. I have implemented arrangements to reallocate duties for a further period to make best use of the available capacity within the existing budgets and delegations, and I must stress that I'm very mindful of the very significant workloads that not the reshaping of the budget and other work will bring over the few months, and had to make sure that there was absolute clarity and mindful to the workloads on the individuals involved. This will ensure I can, within our policies, continue to sustain arrangements for leadership within the service, particularly not to repeat history, but when we agreed back in July last year, it was supposed to be for a short interim period, but obviously other things have happened in the intervening period. But it's just to give that continuity, consistency and direction and clarity, particularly to members, but also particularly to staff, until members decide the future shape of the council in December. Happy to take any questions, Leader.
Ian?
Thanks, Chair. Just on the member engagement, could you tell us now, give us a bit more clarity over the sort of timescales, the format of that engagement, frequency, the officer level involved, and when the cross-service reviews in whatever form they currently are now in will be made available to all members?
If I deal with the last one first, the first cross-service review that's coming to you is to EEI, and I think the papers are already out, and that relates to particularly roads, fleet management, etc. And what I've said in the paper is that the decision of the committee does not bind to the structure. That would need to be factored into the structure to see where that sits and the best management arrangement around it. But that's why the timescale to December fits, because obviously the consideration of the committee's budget, consideration of the service review will form part of that review in December, so the two dovetail. Very much the starting point is over the next 3 weeks I will communicate with all groups in liaison to establish what your input needs to be, how we take it forward, because I need to understand the different views around the 4 building blocks that were presented. From that point, we'll then determine how best to communicate through the political groups. But we will then need to pull it together, and we'll obviously seek members' views on how best to pull it together in advance of the scrutiny, or to undertake the scrutiny process. But I want to engage with the individual groups to work out how best that final stage is best taken through before we get to full council. We tend to use seminars. That might not be the best approach, or they might need a new approach for member engagement at that point, so that we're able to have the proper focus and discussion, so that when we come to full council, we're focusing on the decision-making process rather than the information process. So that's why I'll be engaging with the groups. Also, if groups wish individual members to, individual representatives to engage out with that first 3-week process, happy to engage any time to take that forward, because obviously I want to start off with an understanding of the different ambitions or thoughts you've got in developing the process. But it's not fixed at the back end, because I really need to engage with members first to see what it is you'd like me to bring back.
Jill.
Thank you, Leader. It's a specific question, if you turn to page 42, 3.7. It's really to do with the wording in that document and a question regarding governance. In particular, if we have a director of CES who also is monitoring officer and governance officer for the council, how do we deal with that? I just
Sorry, can just before we'll need to
Sorry.
put it in my position.
Well, it's still
Okay.
a specific question surrounding that. I mean, how can we monitor and govern our own service? And I just want to ask a question surrounding that from a good governance point of view.
Thank you for that. I would actually have said, if I had a chance to speak to Alec, who arrived late, then that would have been quite easily for Alec for that to answer. The monitoring officer position is a designated position given to an individual. It is for the individual to determine when a conflict of interest took place, and therefore I would expect Alec to have arrangements in place when a conflict arises to delegate that to. Obviously, I can't answer for the monitoring officer because that is a designation that you have provided to that individual. But in short, I would expect some form of deputy arrangement to be formally in place. So when a conflict of interest is perceived by the monitoring officer, there is clarity and a clear, there's clarity on that process that it would then move to a deputy monitoring officer as designated by the monitoring officer. And I'm happy for members for clarification of that to be brought to all members as soon as possible. But obviously I cannot direct the monitoring officer because that is purpose is to hold me to account as well as the members.
Jill.
I just think it's very important as councillors that we actually see that information.
Well, I will have the I would have had the discussion with the monitoring officer before he came in. Happy to clarify.
Same point. Yep.
Yeah, and Jill has made it, outlined the case. Chair, I think it's something that we need to bring back. You know, could be a conflict of where there could be a conflict of interest. I think it's something for the council to look at, not only for the council but the individual as well, so that it's depersonalised in terms of how the council deal with this issue in appointing the monitoring officer. And I think we've got to be clear on it as to how conflicts can arise in certain circumstances.
Just before Gavin comes in, there's, I think, sorry, would you stop switching on and off something where it is? I think Alex has absolute integrity in what he does as he showed there. No, I'm not saying he realised there was a conflict of interest there with the discussion, and he immediately left and got somebody else in his place. And I think what Gavin's saying is, you know, if there is a conflict of interest in his job or a report he's putting up, that will be taken over by another, you know, he'll deal with that as he did there, get somebody else in to deal with that. But yes, we need clarity on that. But I think, Gavin, I'll let you in.
I think that there's two issues. This isn't about individuals, it's about the post. Working with current delegations and budgets, this is a model I believe that can work, relying on the absolute integrity of the monitoring officer. I think the discussion that we need to have in the next 2 months is how what the role of the monitoring officer fits into the new structure, to provide that absolute clarity to ensure that we cannot have a situation of conflict of interest. Happy to take that forward in the discussions, but I would have to say that I don't believe any questions of integrity around the current process have been raised or are appropriate. I think that I will absolutely build that into the recommendations coming forward in December to make sure. I think what I'm recommending at this point is that this, I believe, is the best arrangement, subject to the clarification being asked for by the member. And I'll be happy to provide that clarification as soon as possible.
Okay, Finlay.
Thanks, Chair. What I would like to see coming forward in December is a clear programme with dates where we can actually look to see how, as a council, we can come together and make sure we're actually heading in the right direction. I appreciate there's going to be plenty of member groups consulted and hopefully shape how we go forward. But what I would like to see is a key stage layout of where the council are actually going to have to make decisions, so we don't get ahead of ourselves and find ourselves in a position where we're meeting as a council and some of the implementation is actually taking place.
I did give an assurance that none of the structural elements would move forward without member approval and consideration. There obviously will be operational day-to-day matters that would need to be determined under my delegation, but actually in the timescale between now and December is extremely tight, and the decision in December will be the members, as laid out, will be the decision on the future shape of the council, the structure of the council, and the timetable for implementation from that point, with a key stage process attached to it. So happy to bring that back and happy to provide clarification to individual groups over the next 3 weeks.
Okay, Jane, sorry.
Thank you very much. I totally agree with members who are wanting to see the issue of governance. The second question I have is about the Assistant Chief Executive's responsibilities. I don't know the answer to this. It's a yes or no question. Have we had an end-of-term report on the PwC report? Because at one stage, the Assistant Chief Executive was in charge of kind of, quote-unquote, tidying up social work. And I'm not absolutely clear whether there's been a formal giving back of that responsibility to the Chief Social Work Officer, or how this all works. Could somebody possibly please help me with that? I'm not absolutely sure. My second point that I'll make, please, Leader, is that this is about change, and change is absolutely fine, but it's the ongoing management of things afterwards to make certain that we are providing the public with the services that they have paid for and expect to be a very high quality. I think that's what all members are really looking for in the future. So I would expect any report to come back, just with a thread leading through showing how we are actually going to be able to make certain that that happens as a result of these changes here.
Absolutely. The reason that we've set out the various steps with the staff is actually we need the full understanding of how it's going to work. What's the best and leanest management structure we could have that provides the leadership at the right levels to the staff and actually delivers the outcomes? So therefore, what I'm saying to you, the process we adopt is not the typical, we'll do the building blocks at the top. It will actually have clarity for members on exactly what it means right down to the operational level of how you would manage below that. So this is not about directors and heads of service. This will be about the management layers and how the impact on them coming forward. That may well, members will agree further work to look at that within individual parts of it as we were required to do. But no, it is not just the top of the tree. This will be a management structure, an organisational structure that delivers the members' wants, built from the bottom and the top. I think the other question is that, quite rightly, the Assistant Chief Executive through the change period is providing that support. The Assistant Chief Executive still remains charged with performance management and organisational development, so therefore will still be ensuring that the improvement plans are delivered, put through, but members have made, in my view, an excellent appointment in the new Chief Social Work Officer, who must be allowed to manage their service and take it through. But we will still be maintaining that close eye on the performance management and the delivery of the programme. And obviously, that progress there is reflected in the recent auditor's report, but no, we will not be taking our corporate eye off our provision of corporate support. We'll still provide support, but I think now we must leave it to the new management team to demonstrate their management of the service, which is where appropriate it should lie.
Okay, Willie, was that the point you were wanting to make earlier? That was okay, that's fine. Ian?
Just come back, Leader, to the point that was made earlier in regards to suppose, the governance and the possible conflict there. I mean, I think we've all witnessed it this morning. We've got a monitoring officer, governance officer, director, chief executive, director, community customer service, all being the same person, presiding officer, accounting officer, and a simple question was asked this morning: how many members on the subcommittee housing sub? And you could see the stress that was actually starting to develop there. I think there's a level of stress on a particular person on this council at the moment. We need to recognise what's happening, and that restructuring needs to look at that. We've seen it. It's no complaint. It's only a point I'm picking up because it's been raised here. I think we do have to take it seriously. There possibly is an overstretching of resource at this point.
I think I have a duty of care to all staff, and I think we must recognise that you know, if you were tired after the referendum, the counting officer certainly would be tired, and the stresses. But so that's what I've put in place, is balancing within existing budgets, and also bringing us in line with our own policies that actually we've been acting in temporary duties. Actually, our policy is after 6 months that should be regularised. That's why I'm moving to secondment, to give that clarity, and also taking some of the day-to-day managerial responsibilities and spreading those more appropriately. So it's not just being spread across, it's being spread down to take and allow some of that pressure to come off. So thank you for the comment.
Okay, can we got the recommendations? Can we note 2.1 and 2.2? Okay, thank you. If you move on to item 10, this is the appointments to outside bodies, a report by the Director, Chief Executive Service. We've been asked to appoint a 5th member of the Dumfries and Galloway Strategic Partnership, which is the community planning partnership for this region. This was a post previously held by the SNP. Is there any nominations? Brian.
Thanks, Leader. As I indicated earlier on, I did express an interest naturally on this paper. I have to say, when I opened these papers on Friday, when they dropped through the letterbox, my first reaction when I seen this one in particular was that of anger. At a particular time in events, I received an email from an officer regarding this matter. I thought I'd responded to it, but obviously not. However, I would have thought, in light of the nature of this report, that some form of dialogue between officer and member, myself in this case, would have been the most appropriate way of dealing, at least initially, on this matter. I resigned from, and let me acknowledge once again, at that particular time of events, you did convey your condolences to me, which I'm very grateful for. Now, I held this post, and it was quite confusing in the context of my being deputy leader on the Strategic Partnership, chair of Sederunt, on the Strategic Partnership, leader of SNP. When I resigned as deputy leader, and therefore SNP resigned from the administration, I automatically, naturally seen that strategic position, that strategic partnership position, fall from the deputy leader role, and at the same time I resigned from the chair of Sederunt, so it fell from there. And any dialogue that may have taken place, these points would have come to light, and I was not resigning from the strategic partnership in my capacity as leader of the SNP. I like to think that, giving this clarity maybe gives a better picture of the circumstances surrounding this paper and the unfortunate way, in my opinion, that it's been brought forward. So I believe that it's appropriate information that I share with members here today.
So what you're saying, Brian, is that you resigned on the deputy leader side, but you didn't resign from the SNP group that you were representing on that. The SNP group still had a place in there. So are you, it's fine, are you withdrawing your resignation from the strategic partnership? Are you withdrawing your resignation from the strategic partnership?
In the context of SNP group leader, yes.
Yep. So, well, how does, so that yep.
I think for absolute clarity, what Councillor Collins, and I apologise if Councillor wasn't taken forward, is saying that actually by resigning as deputy leader, he didn't actually resign. It was because the role, members had agreed that the role, this position, linked to deputy leader. So what he was saying, as he resigned the deputy leader's post, by default, this fell. That was not a conscious decision to resign, as you did for Swestrand. So I hope not putting words in members' mouth, but that's the point you're making, that actually he did not consciously choose to resign as deputy leader. It was a consequence of, because it was linked to the deputy leader post.
Okay, members. I think I'm going to make a decision here and withdraw this paper and leave it the status quo that the SNP have a representative on the strategic partnership. Sorry, Ivor.
Chair, my understanding there are not 5 council positions on there. There are 4 council positions on the strategic partnership, and the 5th place is Swestrand's chair. Now, when there was myself, Jane, Finlay, and Andy Ferguson, and Brian was there as chair of Swestrand. There were 4 elected members, and the other one was always Swestrand's board member.
It's actually on the papers in 3.4.
So by resigning as a Swestrand's, that representative is no longer in the strategic partnership, is that what you're saying? So it's nothing to do with being deputy?
I think that on the basis that members have moved forward today about proportionality, would it be helpful to members if I brought a paper back to the next full council which set a way forward in discussion with the community planning partners that resolves this to ensure appropriate proportionality? Because I think that the inclusiveness that we're taking forward today, I think it may well be wrong. If members are willing, I'd be happy to bring a paper and have the whole discussions in a way that we can resolve this matter to ensure that way forward, if that's agreeable to yourself, Leader.
Right. I'm going to let another couple of members in, and I'll make a decision on that. Ian, sorry.
I agree entirely with what the Chief Executive just said. I think that's absolutely right. It's what I would have proposed. The only thing I'd like to expand on is regards to the numbers, the membership, if that's able to expand, because I think we're the 4th largest group on the council, but we have no membership there. It's one of the most important strategic partnerships, so therefore we don't have a seat there. I would like to think we'd be able to get the chance if we can expand the numbers. If not, it should at least be in the report that comes forward that the size of the group should be taken into consideration.
I think one of the things is that it's the strategic partnership that makes the decisions who they've got on their membership, so that will, we can't tell them what to do on that basis, but I understand exactly where we're coming from. Colin?
Shows my level of ignorance. We're not being part of that.
No.
I just want to say I welcome the fact that all groups are now coming on board with the concept of proportionality. It's something the Labour Group have been pressing for some time when it comes to outside bodies, and I'd certainly welcome proper proportionality in all outside bodies as a way forward, and I think that'd be welcome having that report come to full council.
Can we withdraw the paper? Thank you. Oh, sorry, Jim.
Yeah, thanks, Leader. It was just regarding the comments that were made under 3.4. The wordings somewhat woolly there. It says the council currently has 4 elected members in the partnership and then names them. And then it says a vacancy exists for the 5th place. Doesn't it actually say that we're only supposed to have 4 councillors? That can be read either way. We need that clarified.
I think that's why I'm withdrawing this paper. Yeah, thanks. Right, moving on to item 11. This is notice of motion, Stranraer waterfront regeneration. This is a report by Director Chief Executive Service. This is a report and a notice of motion from Jim McClone and Alistair Geddes. It was originally scheduled to be considered at a meeting in June 2014. There was some doubt about the information contained in the report, and we deferred consideration of it to enable that information to be obtained. The report now sets out the Council's position, both in relation to the receipts from Scottish Water, the Council's expenditure on Stranraer seafront, and the Council's current policy in relation to the use of capital receipts. I'll ask Jim to speak to this motion, and then I'll give Alistair the opportunity to second it before we open in the debate.
Yeah, thanks, Leader. Again, in relation to the figures supplied within the report, I would draw members' attention to the detail provided at 3.5 that the total sale of the council asset raised 58,190, made up of £5,000 early entry payment, with the remaining 53,190 received sometime later. Both this figure and the 46,800 for the upfront lease rental are shown at 3.8, and by simple addition of those two figures, the total comes to 104,990. Capital receipts reported to members for the sale and lease of this land was 99,990. The contents of this report again fail to explain where this extra 5,000, which presumably is the £5,000 early entry payment, has been notified to members as a capital receipt. It is also not clearly outlined in the report where and how the upfront lease payments of 6,720 and 27,506, as outlined at 3.7, have been notified to members as income in the past. As regards the contents of 315 to 317 of the report, I've carried out research into what amount of the 2.427, not 2.43 million as mentioned in 315, was reported to members as being spent in the previous financial year. From information supplied at other committees, 750,000 was spent during 13-14, the previous financial year. The figure shown for the intended spend on the agreed projects in 14-15 amount to 1.519 million. Therefore, the total sum already spent on monies committed and for the financial year is 2.269 million. Given that the total available of 2.427 million, the remaining balance of 158,000 will be available for allocation in the following financial years if the figures supplied to members are accurate. I noted with some dismay that the report does not clearly outline the following. The 2.427 million figure can only be allocated to Stranraer waterfront. The amount of this funding which has already been spent, the amount of funding still available, and of the allocations shown in the table, what funding is actually additional funding over and above the 2.427 that can only be spent on Stranraer waterfront. Within the agreed council policy and capital receipts, it clearly states the definition as being the net proceeds generated through the sale of capital assets. Members should note that nowhere within the agreed council policy does it state or even infer that the proceeds of a rental, lease, or council asset can be treated as a capital receipt. Therefore, to do so with the 46,800 was, in my opinion, out with the remit of the policy. The policy also clearly states that it is important that there is an opportunity for appropriate exceptions to be made to the retention of capital receipts being applied to support corporate policies. I would submit that the regeneration of Stranraer waterfront is just such an appropriate exception. I would also like to remind members that the budget allocation of 2.427 million has, in plain English, been budgeted for in the Council's capital investment strategy since 2002-2003, and that, as a result, this sum, including repayments costs, have been catered for in the Council's capital investment strategy since then. This interpretation of the accurate position of the 2.427 million is not merely by my own, but was confirmed to me by Mr. Garrett. To turn to the information contained in 3.12, I would also like to remind members that Policy and Resources Committee recently ring-fenced expected capital receipts of up to the value of £200,000 from the sale of 3 council assets in a town in the region to assist a project within that town. This same committee only last week provisionally agreed to a further sum of £270,000 funding for this same project, which will be considered in the forthcoming capital investment plans. These figures do not include £27,000 worth of revenue cost each and every year following the first 3 years of the project, if it is successful, that the council will have to find. While I fully support the aims of the project and also fully supported at both of the above Policy and Resources Committee the ring fences of capital receipts, etc., to this project, I am of the opinion that the redevelopment of Stranraer waterfront is of at least, if not more, importance to the regeneration of the region than the project I have referred to, and deserves the same consideration of ring fencing of all the income, both from the sale and the lease of council assets in Stranraer, to the regeneration of the waterfront. It is my opinion that such a difference in treatment of income from the sale and lease of council assets in 2 different areas of the region is unfair, and this is our first opportunity to show that the council is serious about the new priorities that we have just agreed of investing in our key infrastructure and being an inclusive council and ensuring that local people and communities are at the heart of our decision making. I would ask that the total income generated from the sale and lease of council assets listed in this report be allocated to the waterfront project. Should members agree to this motion, I would also ask that the members of the Wigton Area Committee be allowed to recommend to the EIC on what this extra allocation of money be spent on. Thank you.
Alistair.
I'll merely confine my remarks, Leader, to stating that I'll firmly second Councillor McClung's notice of motion. Thank you.
Okay, Colin.
I think there's several points, Chair. I think Jim raised a number of points about the actual figures in the document. I don't begin to follow exactly what he said there, so I don't even know what level of money he's even talking about being reallocated into Stranraer waterfront. What I do take great exception to, however, is its implication that somehow, because a sum of money which, frankly, in relation to the amount of investment this council is making in Stranraer waterfront is pretty insignificant, that somehow, because that figure hasn't been, or it may in fact have been, because most of the money seems to have been spent, and somehow undermines the commitment of this council to Stranraer waterfront. Can I remind the former Vice Chair of EEI that he sat on the committee when that committee allocated 75% of our economic development capital budget to Stranraer waterfront? Not Dumfries Town Centre, not Upper Nithsdale, not the Chorus project, but the Stranraer waterfront project. No other project in this council has received such significant investment in the forthcoming year. And I think it's appalling to suggest that somehow this council is not committed to the regeneration of the waterfront, but given the decisions we've actually already taken. Now, we can have a debate around the sale of assets and where that money should be invested. And what I would suggest that Councillor McClung does is go and have a look at the sale of the assets and the current properties that are up for sale at the moment, and come back and tell me whether or not most of them are in the town of Dumfries, because the reality is they are, and come back and tell me, does he believe that all that money should be invested in the regeneration of Dumfries? Because this council doesn't currently have a policy whereby all the sales of assets are immediately redirected into that particular community. But if that's a direction Councillor McClung wants to go down, then the only loser in that will be the town of Stranraer, because there are not a significant number of assets currently up for sale in Stranraer that could be reinvested, and as a result of that, there is significant sums from elsewhere being invested in the town of Stranraer. But the areas that do have the most assets up for sale at the moment is the town of Dumfries. Now, I'm not proposing that money is redirected to the town of Dumfries for regeneration. Maybe Councillor McClung, however, in the interest of consistency, wishes to do so. What I would suggest we do, Chair, is there's a report coming to the November Policy and Resources Committee on the capital investment strategy, and I've criticised in the past the fact that we take decisions around capital investments not at the same time as we look at the overall availability of resources. Now, that report that's coming in November will look at all the resources available for capital investment, and I suggest that the figures that Councillor McClung is referring to and the sums of money is referring to is dealt with in that report, and we look at the capital investment strategy in the round. That means all the key projects from Stranraer Waterfront to Kirkcudbright Charter, and we look at it together, not in isolation of one single figure that's been suggested today. And I do have to say, I would really guard strongly against taking a blanket approach to the capital assets, because the reality is it will mean that the money will simply go in those areas that have the assets up for sale and not what this council's priorities actually are. But I want to reiterate a point again that councillors unanimously agreed the investment in Stranraer waterfront. It's the single biggest investment this council is making in terms of economic development in the forthcoming year, and I think it shows a strong commitment from this council to the regeneration of Stranraer, and implying otherwise, frankly, is totally inappropriate.
Do you have a seconder? Jeff. Jim, I'll let you back in.
Yeah, I'm fully aware I sat as Vice Chair of the then Planning, Housing and Environment, now EAIC. What I did say within my speech to clarify matters was that the 2.427 million, which is, Councillor Smith says, is a huge percentage of the council's capital expenditure, can only be spent on Stranraer waterfront because of a decision that was made at full council in 2012. So you either spend that money in Stranraer waterfront, or you can't spend it at all. As regarding wanting capital receipts from the sale of land, I'm perfectly happy with the policy of capital receipts. My aim here today was to have councillors given the opportunity that they were not given, following decisions and comments that were made in reports to other committees in 2007 and 2010, that consideration would be given to the money from the sale and lease of the land being allocated to Stranraer.
Colin, you want back in?
Yeah, I want to come back on the point about the 2.47 million. Frankly, if you look at the figures in economic development, the investment that's going in there is over and above the £2.47 million. The £2.47 million was actually additional borrowing the council had, and it was entirely a matter for the council to determine how they spent that money. Council took a decision to allocate that to a range of projects in Stranraer, not just Stranraer waterfront, but the investment that's going in from economic development includes a sum of money, I think around £500,000, over and above that figure, which I think shows a strong commitment, because part of that 2.47 million was spent in the previous financial year, and I think somewhere in the region of 1.5 million is being spent in this particular financial year. But I come back to the point again that this should be taken in the round at policy and resources, and any available figures should be considered as part of the wider capital investment strategy in November.
Okay, we've got a motion in, we've got an amendment. Alec?
Thank you, Leader. The motion is as per the paper submitted by Councillor McClung and seconded by Councillor Geddes. The amendment by Councillor Smith, seconded by Councillor Lever, is that this proposal be considered as part of the report to the Policy and Resources Committee scheduled for November on the capital programme and capital investment strategy in the round. Thank you. Are you ready to proceed, Leader? Leader.
Amendment.
Councillor Bell. Councillor Blake.
Amendment.
Councillor Ian Carruthers. Councillor Karen Carruthers is not present. Councillor Carson.
Amendment.
Councillor Collins. Councillor Davidson.
Motion.
Councillor Dempster.
Amendment.
Councillor Dick.
Motion.
Councillor Dryborough.
Amendment.
Councillor Dykes.
Amendment.
Councillor Ferguson.
Motion.
Councillor Forster.
Motion.
Councillor Geddes.
Motion.
Councillor Gilroy. Councillor Groom. Councillor Yen.
Motion.
Councillor Hislop.
Amendment.
Councillor Lever.
Amendment.
Councillor McCaughtrey.
Amendment.
Councillor McClung.
Motion.
Councillor McComb.
Motion.
Councillor McCutcheon. Councillor McGregor.
Abstain.
Councillor McKee.
Amendment.
Councillor Maitland.
Amendment.
Councillor Mayo.
Amendment.
Councillor Marshall.
Amendment.
Councillor Martin. Councillor Nicholl. Councillor Ogilvie.
Amendment.
Councillor Peacock.
Amendment.
Councillor Prentice.
Amendment.
Councillor Scobie.
Motion.
Councillor Smith. Councillor Stitt. Councillor Syme. Councillor Tate.
Amendment.
Councillor Thompson.
Motion.
Provost Thompson.
Amendment.
Councillor Tuckfield. Councillor Witts.
Motion.
Councillor Wood.
Motion.
Councillor Wiper.
Abstain.
The amendment is carried by 24 votes to 13 with 2 abstentions.
Thank you. Jane.
Member, thank you. Leader, thank you very much indeed. Before you move on, I do think there is an issue here that was raised in the notice of motion, not the motion itself. It is an issue about, despite a request in March of this year made through the proper channels. I think that's actually quite important that is addressed. I asked the question actually at the June meeting, and I felt was rather cast aside. But we have an issue in standing orders that a member can ask for a report. And I am left with the impression that the member has not been given the information that he required according to standing orders. And I would just like a comment made on that, please.
Alex, will you have a look at that?
I'm prepared to have a look at that, sir. I do know that there was various EMES inquiries made by the member and responded to, but I'll check up and see when the request was made and address the issue for you, member.
Thank you. I'm not opening up the debate again, but Jim, I'll let you in.
Yeah, thanks. It's no debate. I did ask for a report to come to P&R. It never appeared. I then took it to the next available full council.
Okay, Alex, you're going to look into that. Okay. Right. Moving on to item 12. Can everybody that's declared an interest, including myself, leave the room?
In the absence of the leader and deputy leader, could I ask for nominations for the chair of committee of council, please?
I nominate Councillor Smith.
I'll second.
Any other nominations? Councillor Smith, would you like to take the chair, please?
Okay, members, item number 12 is a notice of motion by Willie Scobie, seconded by Graham Foster, and asked the Council to revisit the decision taken by the Policy and Resources Committee in December last year in relation to dealing with long-term properties. While the matter was considered further by Policy and Resources Committee last week, I'm informed that the notice of motion is not affected by the 6-month rule since the original policy decision was taken in December last year, and the report to Policy and Resources was an update requested by the CCS Committee. The report to Policy and Resources last week detailed a number of criteria to be applied in relation to exemptions from the application of the policy, and the committee stressed to officers that they were very much of the view that they should exercise maximum discretion in individual cases not covered by the general exemptions in determining any further exceptional circumstances. I appreciate that the notice of motion was put forward some time ago, and the mover and seconder may feel that it has been overtaken by events at last week's Policy and Resources Committee. So I'm first going to ask whether the mover and seconder wishes to proceed with the motion in light of the decision at last week's Policy and Resources Committee.
Yeah, Chair, if you remember, I did make my position clear, and indeed that of the group, that we would reserve the position, and we do want it to continue as the motion before us.
Okay, first decision members will have to take is to decide whether or not we wish to withdraw delegation from Policy and Resources Committee. So first of all, do we have any member wishing to move withdrawal of delegation?
Move withdrawal, Chair.
Okay, moved by Councillor Scobie, seconded by Councillor Foster. Do we have any member wishing to propose that we do not remove delegation? Finlay?
Yeah, I'd move that we don't remove delegation on the basis that they think that the item's been discussed fully, Policy and Resources.
Okay, do we have a seconder? Okay, seconded by George. Okay, so I think first of all we have a vote on the motion, which is to remove delegation, or the amendment, which is not to withdraw delegation.
Correct, sir. Motion by Councillor Scobie, seconded by Councillor Foster. The delegation be withdrawn to enable the notice of motion to be debated. The amendments by Councillor Carson, seconded by Councillor Prentice, that delegation be not withdrawn, standing in the discussion at the Policy and Resources Committee last week. I'll need to ask you to bear with me, Chairman, because I have a few members missing. Councillor Blake.
Amendment.
Councillor Carson.
Amendment.
Councillor Collins. Councillor Davidson. Councillor Dempster. Not present. Councillor Dick.
Amendment.
Councillor Dryborough.
Motion.
Councillor Dykes.
Amendment.
Councillor Ferguson.
Amendment.
Councillor Forster.
Motion.
Councillor Geddes.
Amendment.
Councillor Gilroy is not present. Councillor Yen. Not present. Councillor Lever.
Motion.
Councillor McCaughtrey.
Motion.
Councillor McClung.
Amendment.
Councillor McComb not present. Councillor McGregor.
Amendment.
Councillor McKee.
Motion.
Councillor Maitland.
Amendment.
Councillor Mail.
Amendment.
Councillor Marshall.
Motion.
Councillor Martin.
Motion.
Councillor Nicholl. Not present. Councillor Ogilvie.
Motion.
Councillor Peacock. Present. Councillor Prentice.
Amendment.
Councillor Scobie.
Motion.
Councillor Smith.
Motion.
Councillor Stitt.
Motion.
Councillor Syme. Councillor Tate.
Motion.
Councillor Stephen Thompson. Not present. Provost Thompson. Not present. Councillor Witts.
Abstain.
Councillor present. Councillor Wiper. The amendment is carried by 13 votes to 12 with one abstention.
The moment of glory was short-lived. We'll move on to item number 13. We'll get the rest of the people back.
Vote thanks to the chairman for his timious handling of the meeting.
That's all the sandwich is finished. Okay, is everybody back? Do you know everyone? Okay, can we move on to, oh, there's still somebody else. Okay, moving on to item 13. This is a notice of motion about recent events in Gaza, reported by the Assistant Chief Executive. There's no requirement to remove delegation for this motion, as there is no committee on the Council that has delegated powers for the Middle East. I am therefore going to ask Willie to address his notice of motion, and will offer Alistair the opportunity of seconding it before I open the debate. Willie?
Thanks, Chair, and I thank the Council for accepting the motion, indeed against the atrocities are being inflicted on or in Gaza in the past, in the recent past. It's more from a humanitarian perspective that I bring the motion before the Council today, and as I say, grateful that it has been accepted, and hopefully it will be carried unanimously today. I think it's been said this week, at least in one of the conferences that I listened to, that some 2,100 people have been killed in Gaza, which included children and old people. And this has been at the cost of the indiscriminate bombing that has taken place to hospitals, schools, and other buildings, as the motion says, that the civilian population have used. The motion calls for the implementation of a campaign of boycott and sanctions, and I think we have seen in the past where these have been effective, and none more so than South Africa and the apartheid. And I think we are calling, or the motion is calling on Israel to comply with United Nations resolutions and to observe the principles of international law. I think we should disapprove or deprecate Israel's continued ignoring of these resolutions and flouting indeed international law. So the motion in itself, Chair, it does speak or lay out the case, and I would hope that as a council we can endorse, accept this motion and go forward calling for the content of the motion, not relying solely on ceasefires, as we have seen in the past, where one or either side have broken the ceasefire. So we really need to stop the indiscriminate and disproportionate amount of killing in Gaza, and I so move the motion, Chair.
Thank you, Alistair.
Thanks very much indeed, Leader. I would, obviously, fully support not only the terms of the notice of motion, which I have seconded, but also Councillor Scobie's comments. I would have to be honest and say that this, in fact, is about actions being undertaken by the sovereign state of Israel, and I think it's important, it's absolutely essential, Leader, that in considering the notice of motion, we don't conflate the Jewish people with what's in the notice of motion. This is about the sovereign state of Israel, and both Willie and I have discussed that, and would want to make that absolutely clear. At the end of the day, what we're talking about here, sir, is in fact reining in what has been happening in this part of the world for a significant length of time. And Willie already makes reference, Leader, to the previous campaign that I certainly was involved in an individual capacity, conducted my own boycott of South African goods in the days when the vile and odious apartheid regime was flourishing in that country. And I think, that, the general opprobrium by ordinary people, ordinary members of the public, coupled with an unremitting policy, as it were, to exclude and to exclude South Africa from major sporting, etc., events, etc., eventually got the message home, in fact, that this type of behaviour by sovereign states simply is not acceptable. Now, that's the reason primarily, as far as I'm concerned, why we're calling, you're quite right, we don't have any locus and remit and role within our terms, as it were, for issues in the Middle East. That's why we're calling on the UK government, in fact, to take the lead in this and to address the situation. Because quite frankly, Leader, what we've had to see and have to witness on our television screens in the past simply isn't acceptable, and action should be taken to ensure, in fact, that it is not allowed to continue in the future. So I have much pleasure in seconding Councillor Scobie's notice of motion.
Thank you. A lot of deeply held feelings and emotions, and I understand, everything that's happened in the past and how it's. But whilst members they have the right to bring a motion to the council on any issue they wish, I do fear that this is actually in danger of opening itself up to accusations that we're indulging in tokenism by debating such issues as peace in the Middle East. Given the fact we have very limited influences, I think it's recognised by both the mover and the seconder, and the little influence that we have, and we have no authority in such matters, where the information we have before us is very limited. I also think the council may risk to be being seen as selective in what international issues we debate on. The public could rightly ask, why are we debating issues of atrocity in Gaza, but not, for example, arguably the more immediate issue of the atrocities being perpetuated by ISIS in Syria and northern Iraq? Or they could ask why we're calling for a boycott in goods from Israel, and I presume also the occupied territories, but not, for example, from occupied Western Sahara. That said, speaking personally, I have no objection to the sentiments in the motion before us. The Labour Party has been particularly robust recently in condemning the appalling civilian suffering we have seen in Gaza over the recent months, and we've been consistently reiterated our support for a two-state solution. Hamas is an appalling terrorist organisation, and the repeated firing of rockets at Israeli civilians and the building of tunnels for terrorist purposes has shown its murderous intent. However, Israel's military incursion into Gaza is also utterly appalling. The death toll of innocent Palestinian civilians in Gaza, with an estimated, I think it's 2,100 Palestinians killed and 11,000 injured, cannot be justified, and I suspect that Israel's recent military action will do more damage than good. I'm therefore happy to support the first part of the motion, up to the word peace, which is in the 6th line. However, I don't feel that I have sufficient information before me to make any judgment on the issue of boycotting goods, and we move the amendment to delete the rest of the motion from the word peace on. It's my view it's up to either individual members or groups to lobby a government as they see fit in the matter of a boycott. And obviously, given the clear labelling we have in our shops, it's up to all of us, as individuals, to make what informed decisions we wish when it comes to purchasing goods. Do you have a seconder for my amendment? Tom?
Happy to second, Chairman. I wouldn't wish to add anything more, except to say that I doubt very much if sanctions work. We saw what happened in Iraq, we saw what happened in Rhodesia, and even South Africa. Sanctions failed to work. In fact, opened up a black market where black marketeers exploited the indigenous population far more than the native population. So happy to second your amendment.
Ian?
Thank you, Leader. I welcome this motion from Councillor Scobie and seconded by Councillor Geddes. I have few points to make as well. This is not the only council proposing this across Scotland. There are 4 Scottish councils have adopted BDS policy towards Israel to make it recognize Palestinian human rights. West Dunbartonshire, Sederunt, Carmarthenshire, Midlothian. And few councils already flew Palestinian flag in solidarity, like Glasgow, Edinburgh, West Dunbartonshire, Fife, Aberdeen, Dundee permanently, especially. And Glasgow officially trained with Bethlehem, Dundee with Nablus, and Church of Scotland calls for recognition of Palestinian refugees' rights of return to area they were expelled from. And Palestinians and Israelis always know about decisions such as ours today, and they are very important to whole of the world. And we all know the longest running refugee crisis in the world is in Palestine. And killing continues in West Bank. No rockets, unarmed demonstrators being shot dead. And Gaza recently, we have 2,000 plus dead in latest massacre, teams of thousands maimed with injured, and Gaza's hospital repeatedly shelled, including maternity units and accidents and emergency, and UN refugees shelled with many killed despite Israelis being given coordinates many times to avoid such attack. So I call our council to support this motion. Thank you.
Colin?
Sorry, Leader, I didn't know you'd actually saw me there. Jane had her hand up before me. Anyway, I'm quite happy to go along with the amendment to the word peace. I mean, I think there are atrocities, conflicts, wars all over this planet that I don't agree with, but I really don't see it's this council's job to be interfering in international politics. I mean, we've got a big enough job trying to balance the books in Dumfries and Galloway and look after our own people without going beyond that mark. But I am perfectly happy to agree with what the leader put forward.
Jim? And then, okay, Jane?
Thank you very much. I think we're most of us coming round to the same way of thinking. Where does one start? State-sponsored theft of settlement land by Israelis, as against the shelling and killing of innocent civilians in Israel by Palestinian Hamas. There are wrongs on every side, and I don't pretend to understand or be able to unravel these. I don't think it's our job. If it's of any interest to you, Leader, we had in the independent group come to precisely the same conclusion, down to the last dot after peace, and so we will be supporting you.
Okay, Jim, do you want to? Oh, your name was there. Is it?
Well, simply to reaffirm what Jane has just said, that we looked at this and our conclusion was down to lasting peace and end the motion at that point.
Thank you, Ian.
Thanks, Chair. This is something I've thought about over a long number of years. Some years ago, I was asked to go to a demonstration in Glasgow, and after some consideration, I think it was a conflict between Hezbollah and Hamas, if I remember correctly. I said, absolutely not. I said, it's a conflict between peoples, nations, religions, and cultures, and of a history of which I know little, and I felt ill-advised to do anything other than deprecate the awful suffering on both sides. Initially, I felt that this is well within my own party's, well, slightly beyond my own party's policy, but I have no problem with it. I'm still aware of the atrocities caused by the other side, and I feel that my consideration would go with the amendment proposed by the leader for exactly that. I do not feel as if I'm informed enough to be able to come down one side or the other, but do anything other than deprecate the awful slaughter on both sides, and that's my considered position.
Andy?
Thanks, Leader. And this is obviously a conscious thing, this. But I remember Nelson Mandela standing in Glasgow telling us that it may have appeared a very small thing, but it was a huge thing to the people in South Africa who were living under the apartheid regime. So that a council, the other side of the world basically, were prepared to be vocal and say, this is wrong, stop. With that in mind, I am supporting the motion wholeheartedly. We've got exactly the same situation here. If we had the same, what's the word I'm looking for here, enthusiasm, right, for upholding UN resolutions in this area as we do in others, then we would have a lot safer world. And I actually think we need to support this.
Okay, can we go to the vote?
Thank you, Leader. The motion is by Councillor Scobie, seconded by Councillor Geddes, and it's as submitted on page 69 of the papers. The amendment by yourself, seconded by Councillor McCaughey, is to adopt the wording of the motion up to the word peace in line 6. Are you ready to proceed to the vote, Leader? Leader?
Amendment.
Councillor Blake,
Amendment.
Councillor Carson,
Amendment.
Councillor Collins, Councillor Davidson, Councillor Dempster,
Amendment.
Councillor Dick,
Motion.
Councillor Dryborough,
Amendment.
Councillor Dykes,
Amendment.
Councillor Ferguson,
Motion.
Councillor Forster, Councillor Geddes,
Motion.
Councillor Gilroy, Councillor Yen,
Motion.
Councillor Hislop,
Amendment.
Councillor Lever,
Amendment.
Councillor McCaughtrey,
Amendment.
Councillor McClung,
Motion.
Councillor McComb,
Amendment.
Councillor McCutcheon,
Amendment.
Councillor McGregor,
Amendment.
Councillor McKee,
Amendment.
Councillor Maitland,
Amendment.
Councillor Mayo,
Amendment.
Councillor Marshall,
Amendment.
Councillor Martin, Councillor Nicholl,
Amendment.
Councillor Ogilvie,
Amendment.
Councillor Peacock,
Amendment.
Councillor Prentice,
Amendment.
Councillor Scobie,
Motion.
Councillor Smith, Councillor Stitt,
Amendment.
Councillor Syme,
Amendment.
Councillor Tate,
Amendment.
Councillor Stephen Thompson,
Motion.
Provost Thompson,
Amendment.
Councillor Witts,
Motion.
Councillor Wood, not present, Councillor Wiper,
Amendment.
The amendment is carried by 28 votes to 11.
Thank you. If we can move on to item 14, which is the minutes for approval and noting. Page 1, which is DG First Management Committee. Can I have a mover?
Happy to move.
Seconder?
Happy second.
Yeah. Education Committee, which is on page 5. Can I have a mover?
Happy to move.
Happy to second.
Licensing Panel, on page 13.
Happy to move, Chair.
Happy to second.
17.
Happy to move.
Second.
21.
Happy to move.
Second.
25.
Happy to move, Chair.
Happy to second.
29.
Happy to move, Chair.
Happy to second that as well.
The Local Review Body Minutes, page 33.
Happy to move, Chair.
Happy to second.
The Pension Subcommittee, page 37.
Moved.
Second.
Police, Fire and Rescue Sub, page 41.
Happy to move, Chair.
Happy to second.
The Scrutiny and Performance, page 45.
Happy to move minute.
Happy to second.
Social Work Services, page 49.
Move. Happy to second.
And the rest are for noting. Item 15 of no other business. Thank you very much.